I'm Daniel Williams, and those were the exact words my son's new bride said to my face. Amanda Johnson had just returned from her secret wedding in Vegas, flashing a 3-carat ring I knew my son couldn't afford. She stood in my modest living room, designer heels clicking on my 20-year-old hardwood floors, and delivered the news like she was announcing the weather. Tyler doesn't need some broke teacher dragging down our new life, she continued, examining her manicured nails. We've discussed it. You're just not the image we're going for. What Amanda didn't know was that the prenup she'd signed so eagerly thinking she was protecting herself from my son's poverty contained one very special clause about respecting family sacrifice, and my $31 million investment portfolio was about to teach her the most expensive lesson of her entitled life. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment letting me know which state you're watching from. This story gets wild. Because sometimes the biggest mistake you can make is underestimating the quiet guy in the corner. Let me paint the picture of how Amanda saw me from day one. I'm 56 years old, living in a 3-bedroom townhouse I bought in 2008 for $185,000. I drive a 2012 Honda Civic with 190,000 miles on it. I teach American history at Roosevelt High School, where my monthly take-home pay is exactly $2,847 after taxes and benefits. Amanda took one look at my life and decided I was everything wrong with Tyler's world. The first sign came during Christmas dinner at her parents' estate in Westchester. While I was helping clear dishes, I overheard her on the phone with her college roommate. Tyler's dad is just this broke teacher who lives in some tiny house. I mean, the man makes less in a year than I spend on handbags. She wasn't wrong about the numbers. Her Hermes collection probably did cost more than my annual salary. The second sign was more deliberate. 3 months before the wedding, Amanda started planning what she called family meetings about the ceremony. These meetings happened at expensive restaurants I clearly couldn't afford. When Tyler suggested including me, she'd wave her hand dismissively. Your father wouldn't be comfortable at places like this. Besides, we need to discuss real financial planning. She'd already decided I had nothing valuable to contribute. What Amanda didn't know, what nobody knew, was the choice I'd made 20 years ago. In 2004, I was making $500,000 a year as an investment banker at Goldman Sachs. I had the corner office, the 6-figure bonuses, the whole Manhattan lifestyle. But Tyler was 8 years old, and his mother had just walked out on us, packed her bags one Tuesday morning, and left a note saying she couldn't handle being tied down to family responsibilities. I had exactly 48 hours to decide: hire a full-time nanny and stay on Wall Street, or give up everything to raise my son myself. I chose Tyler. I took the teaching job because it meant summers off, 3 o'clock dismissals, and being home when my son needed me. Every soccer game, every parent-teacher conference, every scraped knee, I was there. But here's what I didn't give up: my financial instincts. With the modest savings I had left after the divorce, I started making quiet investments. Apple stock in 2004 when everyone thought the iPod was a fad. Google during their IPO when people said another search engine. Tesla in 2010 when analysts called it a toy car company. I lived on my teacher's salary and never touched those investments. Not once. Amanda saw the $2,000 suits I'd kept from my banking days, now 20 years old but still well-tailored. She saw my simple Timex watch and assumed I couldn't afford better. She watched me use coupons at the grocery store and thought I was counting every penny. She was half right. I was counting, just not the way she imagined. The breaking point came at their engagement party at her parents' country club. Amanda gave a speech about how excited she was to help Tyler rise above his circumstances and how she was grateful he wouldn't repeat his father's pattern of settling for less. 200 people applauded while I sat there, cutting my prime rib into small pieces, taking my time. Tyler squeezed my shoulder afterward. Dad, you know she doesn't mean anything by it, right? She just wants what's best for our future. That's when I knew I had to act. Not because I needed to prove anything to Amanda, but because my son was starting to believe her version of our story. He was forgetting that every sacrifice I'd made was for him. The real danger wasn't Amanda's insults. It was watching Tyler start to believe them. 3 weeks after the engagement party, Tyler came to visit my townhouse. He stood in my small living room, looking around like he was seeing it for the first time. The walls covered with his childhood photos, his high school graduation picture, the thank you letters from students I'd taught over the years. "Dad," he said, sitting heavily on my second-hand couch, "Amanda's been talking about our future. She thinks maybe you'd be happier in a smaller place. You know, something more manageable for a single guy." I set down my coffee mug carefully. "What kind of smaller place?" "There's a nice assisted living community about 30 minutes from here. Active seniors, planned activities. She says you might meet someone, start fresh. Assisted living at 56. "And the wedding?" I asked. Tyler looked out the window. "She's worried about the photos. You know how social media is these days. Her family has expectations about appearances." That's when I understood. This wasn't just about excluding me from one day. Amanda was systematically erasing me from Tyler's future. In her mind, I was an embarrassment that needed to be managed, hidden, eventually replaced with a more suitable father figure from her social circle. If I stayed silent, I would lose my son completely. Not through any dramatic confrontation, but through a slow, polite suffocation. Birthday dinners would become phone calls. Grandchildren would barely know me. I'd become the sad story Tyler told at parties. My dad tried his best, but the financial implications were actually secondary, but they mattered too. My investment portfolio had grown to $31.2 million. I'd planned to use that money to secure Tyler's future, maybe start a scholarship fund for single parents pursuing education. But if Amanda succeeded in painting me as a failure, Tyler would never accept anything from me. He'd be too ashamed of where it came from. The money would sit in accounts, unused, while he struggled to maintain the lifestyle Amanda expected. Worse, she was already poisoning the well for future generations. At the engagement party, I'd overheard her telling her sister, "Thank God any children we have will take after my side of the family." I'd hate for them to inherit Tyler's father's limitations. My future grandchildren would grow up thinking their grandfather was a cautionary tale about settling for less. That night, after Tyler left, I sat in my study surrounded by 20 years of investment statements and student thank you letters. I had to make a choice. Let Amanda's narrative become our family's truth, or find a way to show Tyler what real success looked like. The prenup Amanda was so eager to sign would give me that opportunity. The confrontation happened at the wedding venue, walkthrough. Amanda had chosen the Riverside Manor, a Victorian estate that cost $12,000 just for the Saturday rental. I'd been deliberately excluded from the planning, but Tyler insisted I see where the ceremony would happen. We met in the grand ballroom where 75 guests would celebrate Tyler and Amanda's union. Crystal chandeliers, hand-carved molding, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking manicured gardens. Amanda wore a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than I made in a month. Her engagement ring caught the afternoon light, a 3-carat diamond that Tyler had somehow afforded on his marketing coordinator's salary. "Isn't it perfect, Dad?" Tyler asked, clearly nervous about my reaction. Before I could answer, Amanda stepped forward. "Daniel, I'm glad you could make it. Though I should mention we've made some adjustments to the ceremony setup." "What kind of adjustments?" She gestured towards the altar area. "We've reserved the front 2 rows for immediate family. That would be my parents, my siblings, and Tyler's important colleagues. Where does that leave me?" "3rd row. Center seat. Perfect view, really." Tyler frowned. "Amanda, he's my father. Shouldn't he be in the front row?" Amanda's smile never wavered. "Sweetheart, we discussed this. It's about the photos. The wedding party needs to look cohesive." "Cohesive how?" I asked quietly. "Well, let's be honest about economics. Your outfit from Men's Warehouse won't photograph well next to my family's attire." The silence stretched. Tyler looked between us, clearly uncomfortable. "I see," I said. "Anything else?" "Actually, yes. We've decided on a no-gift policy. Monetary contributions only. It's more practical for couples at our level." "Your level?" Amanda's mask slipped slightly. "Daniel, I don't mean to be unkind, but a teacher's idea of an appropriate wedding gift might not align with our registry." Tyler started to protest. "Amanda, that's—" She cut him off. "What? Realistic? Your father makes $34,000 a year. My dress costs more than that." $34,036, I corrected, "after taxes." Amanda blinked, surprised by my precision. "You've clearly done your research on my finances?" I continued. Tell me, what else did you find? I know enough. Her voice carried that privileged certainty I remembered from my Wall Street days. I know you couldn't keep your wife. I know you never owned a decent car. I know you live in a townhouse smaller than my parents' guest cottage. Tyler stepped forward. Amanda, stop. But she was warming up now, her true feelings spilling out. I know you gave up any chance at real success to play house with your son, and now you want to drag him down to your level. How exactly am I dragging him down? By making him feel guilty about improving his station. By filling his head with small-town values when he could be networking with people who matter. Her voice echoed in the empty ballroom. Even she seemed surprised by the venom in her words. I took a slow breath. People who matter. Yes, people with influence, resources. People who can help Tyler build something bigger than this. She gestured vaguely in my direction. What do you think I built, Amanda? A modest life teaching other people's children for poverty wages. And that's worthless to you? She looked genuinely confused by the question. Daniel, I don't mean to hurt your feelings, but yes, in today's economy, that's not success. That's survival. Tyler found his voice. Amanda, you can't talk to my dad like that. I'm not trying to be cruel, Tyler. I'm being honest about reality. Your father made choices that led to a limited life. I don't want you making the same mistakes. I nodded slowly. Limited. That's an interesting word. What would you call it? I'd call it focused, I said, but I can see how you might confuse the two. Amanda laughed, a sharp sound in the elegant space. Focused on what? Making barely enough money to keep the lights on? Focused on raising a son who knows the difference between wealth and worth. Oh, please. Don't give me some hallmark card wisdom about money not buying happiness. I wouldn't dream of it, I said. Money absolutely matters. The question is whether you understand what real money looks like. Something in my tone made her hesitate. For just a moment, her confidence wavered. Tyler was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. What's that supposed to mean? Amanda asked. I smiled for the first time all afternoon. Nothing you need to worry about. Yet, that evening, Tyler called me at home. Dad, what did you mean about real money? Amanda's been asking all night. I was sitting in my study. Investment statements spread across my desk, like I did every quarter. 20 years of Apple, Google, Tesla, Amazon companies I'd watched grow from my modest teacher's apartment while Amanda was still in middle school. Just that people define wealth differently, I said. But the way you said it, it was like you knew something she didn't. I know lots of things she doesn't, Tyler. That's what happens when you live 56 years. But he was right to pick up on something. That afternoon at the venue had crystallized a decision I'd been wrestling with for months. Amanda needed to learn what assumptions cost, and Tyler needed to understand what his father had really sacrificed for him. The first seed had been planted 3 weeks earlier, though Amanda hadn't noticed. She'd insisted on meeting at her lawyer's office to finalize the prenup. Just a formality, she'd told Tyler, standard protection for both families. What she didn't know was that I'd asked Tyler to request one specific clause. Something she'd agreed to without reading carefully because it came from her future husband. Character clause, the lawyer had called it. If either party showed persistent contempt for family sacrifice or parental devotion, their rights to marital assets would be forfeit. Amanda had laughed when she signed it. Who would ever be against family devotion? It's like being against puppies. The second seed was subtler. Every month for the past year, I'd been meeting with Margaret Hayes, my investment advisor, at the Starbucks near school. Simple coffee meetings that looked like a teacher grabbing caffeine with a friend. Amanda had noticed these meetings because Tyler had mentioned them. Your dad sure drinks a lot of coffee with that same woman, she'd joked. Should we be worried he's dating someone? Tyler had laughed it off, but I could tell Amanda was curious. In her mind, any woman willing to date a broke teacher must be equally desperate. She never considered that Margaret drove a BMW and wore suits that cost more than my monthly salary. Last week, Amanda had finally asked Tyler directly, Who is this coffee woman your father keeps meeting? Just a friend from the neighborhood, I think. Dad says she gives good advice. Advice about what? I don't know. Life stuff? Amanda had filed this information away with the smug satisfaction of someone who thought she understood everything about everyone. Poor Daniel's friendship with some lonely divorcee was just another sign of his limited social circle. The third seed was the most obvious, but also the most invisible to someone like Amanda. Every year for the past 15 years, I'd received an invitation to something called the Educators' Excellence Awards. I'd been nominated 7 times, won twice, and attended every ceremony. Amanda knew about these events because Tyler sometimes mentioned them. Dad's got another teacher award thing tonight. Kind of boring, but he seems to enjoy the recognition. What Tyler didn't know, what nobody knew, was that these ceremonies weren't just about teaching awards. They were fundraising galas where successful professionals donated money to education causes. The same ballroom where I received my Teacher of the Year plaque also hosted silent auctions where art pieces sold for $50,000 and vacation packages went for $30,000. I'd been attending these events for years, watching from the cheap seats while wealthy donors bid on luxury items. But this year, I'd done something different. I'd submitted an anonymous donation to the scholarship fund, $500,000 to support children of single parents pursuing college degrees. The ceremony was scheduled for next week. Tyler would be there. He'd finally agreed to attend one of my boring teacher events. Amanda would be there too, of course. She never missed an opportunity to be seen at charity functions. She just didn't know she'd be seeing a side of her father-in-law that would change everything. The engagement party at Westchester Country Club should have been a celebration. Instead, it became the night Amanda revealed exactly who she was. The club itself was everything you'd expect from old money leather chairs, oil paintings of long-dead members, waiters in white gloves serving drinks that cost more per glass than I spent on groceries in a week. Tyler had insisted I attend, despite Amanda's obvious reluctance. "It's your engagement party too, Dad. These people should meet you." I wore my best suit, a navy Brooks Brothers from my Wall Street days that still fit perfectly despite being 20 years old. I'd polished my simple Timex watch and driven my Honda carefully through the valet line, watching the attendant's face as luxury sedans and sports cars surrounded my modest car. Amanda's family had invited 60 people. Tyler and I knew maybe 8 of them. The cocktail hour started well enough. I made conversation with Amanda's uncle about the recent renovation of the club's golf course, discussed the rising cost of college tuition with a family friend who was a university administrator, but I could feel Amanda watching me, cataloging every interaction, every word, like she was gathering evidence for some future prosecution. The moment came during dinner, after the second bottle of wine had been opened, and Amanda's confidence was at its peak. She stood at the head table, champagne flute in hand, that 3-carat engagement ring catching the chandelier light. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight," she began, her voice carrying clearly across the dining room. "Tyler and I are so grateful to have such wonderful people in our lives." Polite applause, smiles from family and friends. As many of you know, Tyler and I come from very different backgrounds," Amanda continued, her eyes finding mine across the room. "I've been blessed with advantages that not everyone has had." A few uncomfortable shifts in chairs. Her parents exchanged glances. "But that's what makes our love story so beautiful. Tyler has shown me what it means to appreciate simple things, to find joy in modest circumstances." The pause before modest circumstances was deliberate. Several people turned to look at me. Tyler reached for her hand. "Amanda, maybe we should—" But she was just getting started. "Tyler's father, Daniel, has taught me so much about different ways of living." Her smile was radiant and cold. "He's shown me what happens when someone chooses comfort over ambition, security over success." My jaw tightened, but I kept cutting my prime rib into precise pieces. "Some people might call it settling," Amanda continued, "but I prefer to think of it as finding your level." Daniel found his level as a high school teacher, living in his little townhouse, driving his little car, and there's nothing wrong with that. The dining room was completely silent now, except for the clink of my knife against china. In fact, I'm grateful Tyler was raised with such humble values. It means he'll never take for granted everything I can offer him. The opportunities, the connections, the lifestyle he deserves, but never had access to. Amanda's mother looked mortified. Her father was staring at his plate. "I know some families worry about economic compatibility in marriage," Amanda said, warming to her theme. "But Tyler and I have talked about this extensively. He understands that this relationship will lift him up, give him chances his father never had, or never took. She paused to sip her champagne, surveying the room like a general reviewing troops. Tyler won't have to settle for a tiny paycheck and a lonely apartment. He won't have to explain to his children why Daddy couldn't keep Mommy happy. He won't have to make excuses for mediocrity. Now the silence was deafening. Even Amanda's closest friends were looking away. Some people sacrifice for their families, she concluded, raising her glass. But the best gift Tyler can give our future children is showing them what real success looks like. Not the kind you settle for, but the kind you reach for. She gestured toward me with her champagne flute. So here's to Daniel Williams for raising a son humble enough to recognize an opportunity when he sees one. And here's to Tyler for being smart enough to take it. The applause was scattered and uncomfortable. Most people didn't even raise their glasses. But Amanda beamed like she'd just delivered the Gettysburg Address. I stood up slowly, setting my napkin beside my plate. Every eye in the room followed me as I walked to the head table. Amanda's smile faltered slightly as I approached. That was quite a speech, I said, my voice carrying clearly in the silent room. I meant every word, she replied, chin raised defiantly. I know you did. That's what makes it perfect. Her brow furrowed. Perfect? I turned to address the room. How many of you have children? About half the hands went up. And how many of you have made sacrifices for those children? Given up something you wanted so they could have something they needed? Nearly every hand stayed up. Then you understand, I said, looking back at Amanda, that a parent's love isn't measured by bank account balances or zip codes or the price of your car. Amanda's face was flushed, whether from wine or anger I couldn't tell. It's measured, I continued, by what you're willing to give up and what you're willing to endure, even public humiliation from someone who mistakes arrogance for intelligence. The room was dead silent. Amanda opened her mouth to respond, but I held up one finger. Next week, Tyler and I will be attending the Educators' Excellence Awards at the Downtown Marriott. It's one of those boring teacher events you've heard so much about. I smiled. You're welcome to join us. I have a feeling it might change your perspective on a few things. I walked back to my table, finished my prime rib, and left without another word. The Educators' Excellence Award ceremony was held in the grand ballroom of the Downtown Marriott, with 300 teachers, administrators, and education supporters filling round tables decorated with simple centerpieces. Tyler wore his best suit and looked nervous. Amanda wore a black cocktail dress that probably cost more than most attendees' monthly salaries, and her expression suggested she was doing charity work by being there. How long do these things usually last? She asked as we found our assigned table near the back. About 2 hours, I said, but don't worry. The speeches are usually short. Amanda surveyed the room with barely concealed disdain. Teachers and principals mingled with local business leaders, but nothing about the event screamed wealth or prestige. The auction items displayed around the room's perimeter looked modest dinner certificates, weekend getaways, artwork from local artists. Is that woman waving at you? Tyler asked. Margaret Hayes was approaching our table, impeccably dressed in a charcoal gray suit that would have fit perfectly in any Manhattan boardroom. Daniel! She embraced me warmly. I'm so excited about tonight. Amanda's eyes narrowed as she took in Margaret's obvious affluence, the Cartier watch, the Louboutin heels, the confidence of someone accustomed to expensive rooms. Margaret, I'd like you to meet my son Tyler and his wife Amanda. This is Margaret Hayes, my financial advisor. The word financial hit Amanda like cold water. She extended her hand with newfound interest. Advisor? Amanda asked. For what kind of portfolio? Margaret's smile was diplomatic. Daniel prefers to keep his business private, but I will say he's been one of my most successful long-term clients. Before Amanda could probe further, the ceremony began. Principal Roberts took the podium to welcome everyone and begin the evening's recognitions. Standard teacher awards were presented: classroom innovation, student mentorship, community service. Amanda checked her phone repeatedly, clearly bored. Then Principal Roberts returned to the microphone for what he called a special recognition. Tonight, we want to honor someone who embodies the true spirit of education, he began. For 20 years, this person has not only excelled in the classroom, but has also supported education in ways most people never see. Amanda glanced around, mildly curious now. This individual has mentored countless students, many of whom have gone on to remarkable success. But more than that, he has supported education financially in extraordinary ways. Tyler straightened in his chair, sensing something important was coming. Without fanfare or publicity, this person has donated over $3.8 million to educational causes over the past decade. Scholarship funds, classroom resources, building improvements, technology initiatives. The room had gone completely quiet. Even Amanda was paying attention now. He has funded full college scholarships for 47 students from single-parent households. He has anonymously covered textbook costs, school supplies, and even basic necessities for students whose families were struggling. Principal Roberts paused, scanning the room. Tonight, we present our first ever Lifetime Achievement Award for Educational Philanthropy to Mr. Daniel Williams. The applause was immediate and sustained. Tyler's mouth fell open. Amanda looked like she'd been slapped. I stood slowly, straightened my 20-year-old tie, and walked to the podium. The spotlight was brighter than I'd expected. Looking out at the audience, I could see Margaret beaming with pride, Tyler looking stunned, and Amanda staring at me like I was a stranger. "Thank you," I began, waiting for the applause to die down. "I want to start by clarifying something. Those donations weren't charity. They were investments." A few chuckles from the audience. 20 years ago, I left a career in investment banking to become a teacher. People thought I was crazy to give up a $500,000 salary for a job that paid $34,000 a year. I found Amanda in the audience. Her face was pale. But here's what I learned about real wealth. It's not what you accumulate. It's what you multiply. Every student I taught, every scholarship I funded, every opportunity I helped create, that was compound interest in its purest form. More applause, but I held up my hand. The students I taught have become doctors, engineers, small business owners, teachers themselves. The kids I helped with scholarships are now contributing members of society who will help the next generation. That's not just return on investment, that's legacy. I pulled out a single sheet of paper from my jacket pocket. But since we're talking about money tonight, let me share some numbers with you. 20 years of teaching salary, invested carefully in companies like Apple, Google, Tesla, Amazon. 20 years of compound growth. The room was dead silent. Current portfolio value, $31.2 million. Gasps rippled through the audience. Tyler dropped his water glass. Amanda's champagne flute slipped from her fingers and shattered on the floor. Every penny earned while I was making what some people might call poverty wages, I continued. Every dollar growing while I was grading papers at night, and coaching soccer on weekends, and being there for my son when he needed me most. I folded the paper and put it back in my pocket. Success isn't about the size of your paycheck. It's about the size of your vision. I never stopped being an investor. I just started investing in things that mattered. The standing ovation lasted nearly 5 minutes. When I returned to the table, Tyler was crying. Amanda was staring at her hands, her face flushed with something between embarrassment and rage. "Dad," Tyler whispered, "I had no idea." That was the point, son. Wealth is loudest when it's insecure. Real money doesn't need to announce itself. Amanda finally found her voice. $31 million? Give or take a few $100,000, depending on how the market closed today. She looked around the room, suddenly seeing everything differently. The business leaders at nearby tables, the auction items that now seemed like small gestures from someone who could afford much more, the respect everyone was showing me. "Why didn't you ever tell us?" Tyler asked. "Because I wanted you to respect the man, not the money," I said. "I wanted you to understand what your old dad sacrificed, not what he earned." Margaret leaned over. "Daniel's been incredibly strategic about this. The donations are all structured for maximum tax efficiency while supporting causes he believes in." Amanda was calculating. I could see the wheels turning. "The prenup," she said quietly. "What about it?" Tyler asked. Amanda's face had gone completely white. "The character clause. The part about contempt for family sacrifice." I nodded. "Interesting clause, that one. Your lawyer recommended it, actually. Said it was becoming standard language for protecting family relationships." "But what does it mean exactly?" Tyler asked, looking between us. Margaret opened her briefcase and pulled out a legal document. "It means that if either party shows persistent contempt for parental sacrifice or family devotion, their rights to marital assets are forfeit." Amanda stood up so quickly her chair fell backward. I need some air. As she rushed toward the exit, Tyler started to follow her, but I caught his arm gently. Let her process this, I said. She's just learned that every assumption she made about success, about me, about our family, was wrong. That's not easy for anyone. Through the ballroom windows, I could see Amanda on her phone in the hotel lobby, pacing frantically, probably calling her lawyer or her parents, or trying to figure out what she'd gotten herself into. Dad, Tyler said, I'm so sorry. The things she said at the engagement party, the way she treated you. She treated me the way I allowed her to treat me, I said. But that ends now. The evening continued around us, but we sat quietly at our table, 20 years of hidden truth finally in the open between father and son. And somewhere in the hotel lobby, Amanda was learning what it cost to mistake quiet dignity for weakness. The emergency meeting took place in Amanda's family lawyer's office 3 days after the awards ceremony. Present were Amanda, Tyler, myself, Amanda's parents, her lawyer Harrison Mitchell, and my own legal counsel, Patricia Wong, a name partner at one of Manhattan's most prestigious firms whose hourly rate made Amanda's family lawyer look like a public defender. Amanda had spent the past 3 days in crisis mode, making frantic phone calls and demanding explanations that nobody could give her. The woman who had dismissed me as a failed single dad was now facing the reality that she'd married into a family worth more than $30 million, and her own behavior might have cost her access to any of it. Let's cut through the dramatics, Harrison Mitchell began, clearly uncomfortable with the whole situation. I've reviewed the prenuptial agreement, and I need to understand exactly what we're dealing with here. Patricia Wong placed a thick folder on the conference table. The prenup contains what we call a character clause, standard language that protects family assets from individuals who show contempt for family relationships. Define contempt, Amanda's father, Richard Johnson, interjected. He'd been mostly silent since learning about my net worth, probably recalculating every interaction we'd ever had. In this case, Patricia continued, the clause specifically addresses persistent contempt for parental sacrifice, family devotion, or the dismissal of a parent's contributions based on economic status. Amanda shifted uncomfortably. That's incredibly vague. Actually, it's quite specific, I said, speaking for the first time since we'd sat down, and well documented. Patricia opened the folder. We have video evidence from the engagement party at Westchester Country Club, where Mrs. Williams publicly ridiculed her father-in-law's career choices, financial status, and personal history. She slid a USB drive across the table. The club's event coordinator provided security footage showing Mrs. Williams' speech, in which she referred to Mr. Williams as having found his level and suggested his life represented settling for mediocrity. Amanda's face went pale. That was taken out of context. We also have witness statements from 12 individuals present at that event, Patricia continued, describing Mrs. Williams' comments as deliberately cruel and publicly humiliating. Tyler sat silently, staring at his hands. This was the first time he'd heard the complete legal breakdown of his wife's behavior. Additionally, Patricia said, pulling out another document, we have documented evidence of Mrs. Williams' systematic attempts to exclude Mr. Williams from wedding planning, her statements to multiple third parties referring to him as broke and embarrassing, and her suggestion that he should be placed in assisted living despite being a healthy 56-year-old man. Harrison Mitchell was taking notes frantically. What are the financial implications of this clause? Patricia's expression was professionally neutral. Upon activation, Mrs. Williams forfeits all rights to marital property acquired during the marriage, including any increase in value of premarital assets. What does that mean in practical terms? Richard Johnson asked. It means, I said quietly, that Amanda's marriage to Tyler gives her legal access to whatever Tyler owns independently, which at the moment is his car and about $8,000 in savings. The silence in the room was deafening. But the investments, Amanda whispered, the $31 million, are held in trust for Tyler, Patricia explained, structured in a way that protects them from exactly this type of situation. If the character clause is triggered, those assets remain with the Williams family, but become inaccessible to the spouse who triggered it. Amanda's lawyer cleared his throat. Can we discuss remediation? Some kind of resolution that satisfies all parties? I looked at Tyler, who was finally meeting my eyes. What do you think, son? Tyler took a deep breath. Dad, I'm ashamed of how Amanda treated you. I should have stopped it. You shouldn't have had to stop it, I replied. Respect is something adults give freely, not something children have to demand. Amanda found her voice. Daniel, I apologize. I was wrong about everything. Can we find a way to move past this? I appreciate the apology, I said, but this isn't about my feelings. It's about protecting our family from people who measure worth by bank statements. Patricia withdrew another document. Mr. Williams has prepared a settlement offer. She slid the paper to Amanda's side of the table. Harrison Mitchell read it quickly, his eyebrows rising. What does it say? Amanda asked. It says, Harrison replied slowly, that retry P continue edit. It says, Harrison replied slowly, that you can remain married to Tyler, but you waive all current and future claims to the Williams family trust assets. In exchange, Mr. Williams will establish a separate fund of $500,000 as a wedding gift money that will be yours regardless of what happens to the marriage. Amanda stared at the document. 500,000? More money than you've ever earned yourself, I observed. Consider it a lesson in the value of work. Tyler finally spoke up. Amanda, you need to understand something. My father didn't just sacrifice his Wall Street career for me. He sacrificed his pride, over and over, letting people like you assume he was a failure when he was actually building something incredible. Amanda's mother, who had been silent throughout the meeting, finally spoke. Amanda, perhaps you should take this offer. But $31 million is not yours, Patricia interrupted firmly. Has never been yours, will never be yours. The character clause ensures that. I leaned forward. Amanda, you have two choices. Sign this settlement and walk away with more money than most people see in a lifetime, plus the chance to rebuild your relationship with Tyler on honest ground. Or fight this legally and end up with nothing but attorney's fees. Harrison Mitchell was reviewing the legal documents. Mrs. Williams, I have to advise you that this clause is ironclad. We could spend years in litigation and lose every case. What about our house? Amanda asked. The one we were planning to buy. With what down payment? Tyler asked quietly. Amanda, I make $42,000 a year. You've never worked. We were going to live on wedding gifts and hope something worked out. The reality was sinking in. Amanda had built her entire identity around marrying up, gaining access to a lifestyle she felt entitled to. Instead, she'd married a marketing coordinator with modest savings and a father she'd spent months publicly humiliating. If I sign this, Amanda said, what happens to us? Tyler looked at me, then back at his wife. That depends on whether you can love someone for who they are, not what they have. But I thought you understood, Amanda said desperately. I thought we both wanted more than this. More than what? Tyler asked. More than a father who gave up millions to raise his child? More than a man who quietly donated almost $4 million to help other people's children get educations? More than someone who built real wealth while living like he had nothing because he valued character over appearances? Amanda was crying now, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of frustration, of someone who'd been playing a game and suddenly realized she'd never understood the rules. I need time to think, she whispered. You have 24 hours, Patricia said, closing her folder. After that, Mr. Williams will activate the character clause and you'll receive nothing. As we left the office, Tyler walked beside me in silence. We reached the parking garage where my Honda sat next to Amanda's BMW. Dad, Tyler said, I want you to know something. Even if I'd never learned about the money, I'm proud of what you chose. I'm proud you chose me. I put my hand on his shoulder. I didn't choose you over success, son. I chose you as my definition of success. That evening, Amanda called Tyler to say she was staying at her parents' house to think things over. But I knew she'd already made her decision. Some people, when faced with the choice between love and money, will always choose money, even when they've already lost it. Amanda signed the settlement at 4:47 p.m. the next day. She walked into the lawyer's office wearing designer sunglasses to hide her puffy eyes, scrawled her signature across the documents without reading them, and walked out with a check for $500,000 more money than she'd ever possessed independently. But the real consequences were just beginning. Word of the Educators' Excellence Awards had spread through social media faster than Amanda could control it. Someone had posted a video of my speech, and by Thursday morning, #TeacherMillionaire was trending on Twitter. The local news picked up the story. High school teacher's secret. $31 million portfolio built on Apple and Google stock. The reporter interviewed former students who remembered me as the teacher who stayed late to help with college applications and the one who paid for my textbooks when my mom couldn't afford them. Amanda's social circle, the trust fund friends who had attended her engagement party, saw every news story. They remembered her cruel speech about my modest circumstances and her public humiliation of a man who, it turned out, had been quietly donating more money to charity than their parents had ever earned. Tyler called me Wednesday evening, his voice strained. Dad, Amanda's friends are posting things on Instagram. Screenshots of news articles about you with captions like, when you publicly mock a millionaire philanthropist because you think he's poor. How is she handling it? Not well. Her phone's been ringing nonstop. Reporters wanting interviews, old college friends asking if the stories are true, her sorority sisters calling to congratulate her and marrying into money, not knowing she just signed away any access to it. The irony was perfect. Amanda had spent months worrying about how my modest appearance would reflect on her social status. Now she was discovering what actual social humiliation felt like. The story reached its peak when Forbes called Thursday morning. Mr. Williams, this is Jennifer Chen from Forbes magazine. We're running a feature on unconventional wealth-building strategies, and your story has caught our attention. Would you be available for an interview? I politely declined, but the fact that Forbes had called leaked somehow, probably through the journalist's assistant. And by Friday morning, Amanda was fielding calls from people who wanted to know if she could arrange introductions to her millionaire father-in-law. The wedding, scheduled for the following month, became another casualty. Amanda's parents, Richard and Patricia Johnson, had invited 200 guests to witness their daughter marry up into what they assumed was a better social position. Now they faced the embarrassment of explaining that their daughter had publicly insulted a man worth more than their entire extended family combined. We need to postpone, Amanda told Tyler during one of their increasingly tense phone conversations. I can't face people right now. What people, Amanda? Your friends who are laughing at you, or my family who you spent months treating like dirt? But the most significant consequence was Tyler himself. For 23 years, my son had seen me through Amanda's eyes, a nice man who'd made small choices and lived a small life. Now he was reprocessing every memory, every conversation, every moment, when I'd quietly absorbed someone's condescension rather than defend myself. Saturday morning, he showed up at my townhouse with coffee and bagels. I keep thinking about things, he said as we sat in my small kitchen, like when you helped me with my college applications, and I complained about not being able to afford the good schools. You just said we'd find a way to make it work. We did make it work. But you could have written a check for Harvard and not even noticed the money missing. I sipped my coffee carefully. Would that have been better for you? Tyler considered this. I used to think so, but now I earned that scholarship to state. I worked for my grades. I appreciated what I had because I knew what it cost. That was the point. Amanda never had to earn anything, Tyler continued. Her parents gave her everything, so nothing had value to her, including people. This was the conversation I'd been hoping to have for 20 years. Tyler, here's what I learned on Wall Street. People who inherit wealth often inherit its worst characteristics. Entitlement, arrogance, the belief that money equals worth. I didn't want that for you. But the investments, Dad. $31 million. When were you going to tell me? I pulled out a folder I'd prepared weeks ago. This is your inheritance structure, set up so you can't access the principal until you're 35. But the interest can fund your education, a business, a house down payment, anything that builds your life rather than just paying for it. Tyler read through the documents, his expression growing more serious. There are conditions. Yes, no drugs, no gambling, no supporting people who treat family members with contempt. I paused. And you have to earn at least $30,000 a year through your own work. I won't raise a trust fund baby, even accidentally. What about Amanda? This was the question I'd been dreading and hoping for simultaneously. That's your decision, son. But I'll ask you this. When she thought I was poor, she treated me terribly. Now that she knows I'm wealthy, she wants back into the family. What does that tell you about her character? Tyler stared out my kitchen window for a long time. It tells me she never loved me for who I am. She loved me for who she thought I could become. That afternoon, Tyler called Amanda and asked for his engagement ring back. 6 months later, Tyler moved back into my townhouse while he figured out his next steps. Amanda had taken her $500,000 settlement and moved to Los Angeles, where nobody knew about her brief, disastrous marriage to a teacher's son. She'd posted exactly one Instagram photo since leaving herself on a beach in Malibu, with the caption, "New Beginnings." No wedding ring visible. Tyler was processing the divorce paperwork when he brought up something that had been bothering him. "Dad, I need to ask you something, and I want a completely honest answer." We were sitting in my study, surrounded by 20 years of investment statements and student thank you letters, the physical evidence of a life lived deliberately. "Go ahead. Did you plan this? The prenup, the awards ceremony, the way everything played out with Amanda?" I set down my pen and looked at my son directly. "I planned to protect our family's assets from someone who showed contempt for family values. Everything else, her behavior, her choices, her consequences, that was all Amanda." "But you knew she'd react badly to learning about the money." "I knew she'd reveal her true character when tested. People always do." Tyler nodded slowly. "The thing is, I'm not even angry at her anymore. I'm angry at myself for not seeing who she really was." 23 is young for that kind of wisdom," I said. "Most people don't learn to see past surface appearances until they've made a few expensive mistakes." "Expensive is right. This divorce is costing me $8,000 in legal fees." I smiled. "Consider it tuition for a very important life lesson." Over the following months, Tyler threw himself into his work with new focus. He'd always been bright, but he'd lacked direction. Now he had both motivation and a clear understanding of what success actually looked like. He started reading investment books, asking me questions about compound interest and long-term planning. Not because he wanted access to my money, but because he wanted to build his own wealth the right way, slowly, deliberately, without cutting ethical corners. "I've been thinking about teaching," he mentioned one evening over dinner. "Teaching what?" "Financial literacy. Maybe to high school students or adults who never learned how money really works. Amanda's whole generation seems to think wealth is about appearances rather than actual assets." I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, pride in a choice my son was making entirely on his own. "That's interesting timing," I said. "I've been thinking about expanding the scholarship program, adding a financial education component." "You mean like workshops? Classes?" "I mean like a foundation, the Williams Family Foundation for Financial Education, with you running the day-to-day operations." Tyler stared at me. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious. You'd have a real salary, real responsibilities, and the chance to help people avoid the mistakes Amanda made judging worth by wealth while remaining financially illiterate herself." "What kind of salary?" "Enough to live independently, save for your future, and build your own investment portfolio. You'd earn respect by helping others, just like I did." That night, Tyler started drafting a business plan for financial literacy programs targeting young adults. His first bullet point was, "Success is not about how much you have, but about how much you understand about what you have." 3 months later, we held our first workshop in the same Roosevelt High School classroom where I'd taught American history for 20 years. 25 young adults attended, including several of my former students who were struggling with student loans and credit card debt. Tyler was a natural teacher. He explained compound interest using real examples, showed them how my Apple stock investment had grown over 2 decades, and most importantly, taught them to distinguish between appearing wealthy and actually building wealth. During the Q&A session, a young woman asked the question I'd been hoping someone would ask: "What's the most important thing you learned from your father about money?" Tyler thought for a moment. "That real wealth is quiet. It doesn't need to announce itself or put other people down. It just grows steadily while you focus on things that actually matter. Family, character, contribution." He paused, looking at me in the back of the room. "And that the best investment you can make is in people who will remember your kindness long after they've forgotten your bank account balance." What would you have done in my position? Let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and whether you think Amanda learned anything from losing everything she thought she wanted.